So we're continuing with the third shir on the Kuzari. I will continue with Maimer Bays, the second discourse. Let's sum up what we're holding. So the Kuzari, at this point, the Chaver is in conversation with the Melech. And at this point, in the beginning of Maimer Bays, in the beginning of the second discourse, the king at this point has already transformed himself and converted, and not only himself, but his entire kingdom. And that's the way the beginning of the Maimer Bays begins, where first it starts off with a small group of people, until this the faith, until this point where the entire kingdom has been transformed and entered into the Jewish faith. And at this point, the king summons the Chaver and says that he would like to, he would like to take this wise person as a teacher, and he would ask him, and he's going to ask him questions on the faith of Yiddishkeit. So let's just say this in short, something that we talked a little bit before. So at this point, the king is understanding from what the Chaver is telling him, from what the wise person is telling him, is that because he had a dream, and in this dream he was told that that your intention is properly accepted on high, and not your actions. And now the king is going through this metamorphosis where he's accepting faith of Yiddishkeit. His understanding is not that it's Elokei Philosophim, it's not that it's the God of the philosophers, the God of some type of detached, unmoved mover, but it's Elokim Chaim, Elokei Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov, the God of Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Hashem that has a relationship with Klal Yisrael and with every individual. So what the language of the Kuzari is in Maimer Daled Gimel. He says there's a difference between a raya and re'iyah. These are two Hebrew words, but raya means, even though the Kuzari was originally written in Arabic, but the idea of raya means proof, which is the idea of logic. How do you reach some type of awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu through logic, which is through deduction, through looking at the universe and looking at the creation, and from creation, understanding that there's a creator. But the Kuzri's path, the path that the Kuzri is laying down, Rabbi Levi is laying down, is that it's not a path of raya, of proof, seichel, detached intelligence, objective intelligence. Rather, it's experiential, it's ria, it's seeing. And then he ventures into a little bit of an explanation of this. But let's see, in contrast to that, to the Rambam. Now, the Rambam, Maimonides, which today we're starting a new cycle of learning of the Rambam, which is very appropriate for everyone to do. The Rambam generally uses logic and to understand, and creation itself to understand the creator. So let's look at 2 points, and we'll see how the Kuzari speaks a little bit different about this topic. In the beginning of Hilchos Yesod Torah, in the beginning of the Rambam, chapter 2, Perek Beis, the Rambam says, how does a person come to a point of love and awe of the Creator? When a person is going to meditate and contemplate the wonderful, magnificent works of the Creator, and to see that there's this wonderful, tremendous amount of wisdom, infinite wisdom that came about in order to this creation to come about into existence. Immediately, this person is induced into a state of love and an expression of gratefulness and humility and praising and desiring to become closer and to understand this name, great name. So it's about a process of looking within creation, and from creation, understanding the Creator. Later on, the Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, the laws of Avodah Zarah, the beginning of the Perek Aleph. So the Rambam talks about the descent from monotheism into a pluralistic understanding of creation, and then continues with what happened with Avram Avinu. So, when this child entered into a more mature state, although he was yet a child, and this boy, Avram Avinu, began to think about by day and by night, how is it possible for the orbiting of all the planets and everything that is moving and there's no mover? And he says that the way that he reached the Liba Meshaited Lumevin, and his understanding was deeper, and he was thinking deep. Actually, he said until the point where from his righteous or his correct understanding, he understood there was a creator. So what the Rambam is basically saying is that Avram Avinu reached an understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the creator of the world, through the process of deduction, through the process of looking at the world, looking at the creation, and through the creation, looking at the tzir, looking at the picture, and through seeing the picture, was able to see the artist. Now, the Kuzari is going to argue that that's not enough, and that's the God of the philosophers. He's going to argue that we actually have to experience it. And interestingly, he brings down in this mimer, he brings down later on in Mimer Daled Yud Zayin, he says like this, that the pasuk says Vayoytze Oisei Achutza, that Hashem takes Avram Avinu outside. So Chazal tell us, the Gemara tells us, it's a Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Nuvav and the Dar Mavet Beis. The Gemara tells us like this: Amaloi, say matzid, leave your perception or your what the Kuzari would say, your understanding of the astronomy of creation. He was asked to leave the wisdom of the stars. And what should he be? What should he do? He should accept upon himself as if he's experiencing, not as if, but as he's experiencing Hashem with taste. See, taste and see that Hashem is good, which means that he has to experience as if you're tasting. There's a difference between something that you're seeing, which is detached, or well, if it's an intellect, it's something that's removed and transcendent, versus something that you're actually experiencing. So Avram is asked to leave his perception, which the Kuzari will say is the perception of the astronomy, the wisdom of creation, the wisdom of the stars, the wisdom of the movement of the planets, etc., and to move into a higher state of consciousness, a higher state of being where you're actually experiencing God. Tamoru Kitev Hashem. The Rambam, on the other hand, he would read this and say that we're not talking about astronomy, but we're talking about astrology. And the truth is, if you look in the Gemara in Shabbos, is clearly talking about within the context of astrology. And the Medrash Rabbah is also Medrash Rabbah Mevdal Chatavu, Yudbeis, and Bereshis Rabbah on this pasuk. The Medrash Rabbah also continues this passage, and then it says, Navi ata ve'ein ata astrologist. Hashem tells Avram Avinu that you're a prophet and you're not an astrologist. Now, astrology is the idea that we're somehow influenced by the stars and by the planets. And that's what Hashem is telling Avram. Let go of that narrative, which according to the Rambam, that narrative doesn't even exist. It's not a real reality. It's just something that for other people that are less intelligent believe in, according to the Rambam. So he's just telling him, leave that understanding, but not that you should let go of the astronomy, which means the pondering of the actual creation itself. This will be the opinion of the Rambam, in contrast to the opinion of the Kuzari, which is we have to experience it. So because it's an experiential, that it's going to be experienced, because the entire structure of the Kuzari is based on a subjective experience of the king and the validity of that experience, which is the dream. The king has a dream, which is a subjective experience that he's having, and the chaver is justifying and validating this dream and saying that what you had this dream is actually some form of a prophetic insight and is pushing you in the right direction to evolve spiritually. So he's giving credence to this idea that we can experience HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we can experience transcendence in an intimate way. So this now poses a question to the Melech. The Melech at this point has been convinced of the truth of the faith, and he's already went through conversion, converted his entire kingdom. But now he starts reading the Torah, which is kind of interesting because he's reading the Torah after he already goes through this process, which is interesting. You would think first that he would read, question the text, and then come to the certain understanding, but it's not. That's not the way. It's actually the reverse. He's convinced of the truth of the Yiddishkeit, and then he comes ahead and starts reading the Torah and starts asking the questions. So he asks the question. The basic question is, he looks in the Torah, and he sees that the Torah is full of this idea, it seems to be that there's an anthropomorphic, very strong anthropomorphic thread that runs through the entire Torah, where the Torah actually talks about Hashem. It talks about HaKadosh Baruch Hu in very humanistic ways. It talks about Hashem descending, Hashem listening, Hashem speaking, Hashem hearing, Hashem seeing. These are very, very strange phrases to him because he just understood that Hashem is transcendent, which we'll have to understand what that means that he understood that. But he's asking the question of the Hakshama Alikus. He's actually a question that seems to be that the Torah is actually expressing things about Hakshama. So the Kuzari is going to give an answer to this question, which later is developed much further by the Rambam. The Rambam is the one that's known for this idea of negative theology, by not saying what is not. We'll talk about the Rambam in a moment. But it's clear that the Rambam was very much influenced by the Kuzari. Rambam lived, some 60 years after the Kuzari. They lived in the same area in Spain. They were born in the same area. The Rambam eventually left Spain. But certainly he was familiar, we know this from other sources, that the Rambam was familiar, because when it talks about translation of his own sefer, his own book, one of the books that this other translator translated was the book of the Kuzari. Anyways, so what is the Kuzari going to speak about? This Kuzari is basically going to define the difference between the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the essence of the Creator, in contrast to the expressions of the Creator, which is not the Creator himself. But before we get into this, to understand why does the Torah use Dibur Torah Koloshim and the other, why does the Torah use the language of man to describe God? Let's understand something, that when the Rishonim, the early commentators, from already the 9th century, 10th century, from Saadia Gaon, which was one of the first texts to be written, Jewish philosophical texts in Benodeus, also written originally in Arabic, and the Sefer HaKuzari, and the Rambam, and the Sefer Ikim. When all these Sfarim are talking about this idea that we're not saying that Hashem actually literally has hands, eyes, God forbid, is not a goof, this is understanding that Chazal always understood. This is part of the Messiah HaTorah. This is always part of the tradition. It was never understood anywhere else. One of the ways that we know how Chazal understood Psukim, besides reading the Gemara, reading the Talmud, or reading the Medrash, which is kind of sometimes complicated, because sometimes the sages themselves speak in metaphors and in Mishalim. Certainly when it comes to the Agadat of Shas, the narratives and the tales of Talmud. So one of the ways to look at and figure out, to understand how Chazal understood Psukim, how the Chazal understand the actual verses of the Torah, is to look at the Targum Onkelos. The Targum Onkelos is from the Tanaic time period. The Targum Onkelos is the first accepted translation of the Torah that was considered sort of like a sacred, almost like a sacred translation of the Torah. It was written by a great tzaddik, a ger, a convert, which is also, like we spoke last week, the idea of coming from the place of darkness, coming from the place of the outside. That's why Torah Sheba'al Peh is specifically connected to converts. And the beginning of Torah Sheba'al Peh is this idea of the Targum Onkelos. So the Targum Onkelos, whenever it comes to a pasuk, whenever it comes to a verse where the Torah seems to describe some type of human features to an experience, The Targum immediately translates this in a very different way. For example, when it says, Vayered Hashem Har Sinai, Hashem descended on Mount Sinai, which seemed to suggest that Hashem descended physically from on high down on the mountain to give the Torah. So the Targum right away translated, V'izgala Hashem atordim Sinai, that Hashem revealed himself. What does it mean? That he descended? Descended is a type of revelation. Vata Kodesh Yoshev Tehillah, the idea of Yoshev, a sitting or descending, is a form of revelation. And this is what the Moira talks about. This also in the Rambam, the Moira book. The Rambam, in the laws of Hilchas Tshuva, in chapter 3, the Rambam writes that Chamisha Heim Anikroim Minim, there are 5 that are considered a min, a heretic. And this is a heretic. This is heresy to believe this. And there's very strict laws. Like he brings down in the law Halacha Vav. What is the laws of a min? One of the categories of a person that's considered a min is a oimer sheyesh sham riboin echad aval shehu gufu b'altmana. If someone says that the Rebbeinu Shalom there is a God, there's a creator, aval shehu gufu b'altmana. However, this creator is a guf, is a physical body and has form, this person is considered a heretic. So this is a very strong word. It's not only do we not believe in it, it's not part of the Messiah, but even to say such a thing, this is considered a total heresy. There's a very strange Ravid, that the Ravid is masig on the Rambam. And the Ravid says, this is the language of the Ravid. The Ravid says that v'kama g'doyim v'toyvim imenu. It says, why does the Rambam call this person a min, a heretic? There were many greater and better people than him. Actually went in this path. Because what they saw from the verses and what they saw from the Haggadah, from the Talmudic stories in the Gemara, which is complicated to the level, to a person's intelligence, which is difficult to decipher. And because of that, they actually read it literally, that Hashem actually has a body. Now, what does the Ravid write? What does the Ravid mean? So the Kesef Mishnah says it's yesh l'tmoya al peh kodesh echikar lo'im shu guf bal tmuna golem tehuvim menu. How is it possible for the Ravid to say that someone that says something that's contradictory to the entire canon of Chazal, someone that says that Hashem actually has a body, is gdolim v'toivim menu? It's very troubling to say that. So therefore, he changes the nusach according to Sefer Ikrim, that it doesn't say gdolim v'toivim menu greater than the Rambam. It could be gdolim v'toivim ma'amenu, like the Rav says. But the point is that we have to understand that the Ravid is not defending and saying that a person that says Hashem has a body is a correct understanding of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. He's not saying that. He's just saying that you cannot call this person a heretic. You can't call this person a min, but he's definitely incorrect. He's just saying if a person is a simpleton and doesn't have a very wide or expansive level of intelligence, and this person reads the text straight up and comes to a certain conclusion and says that this is the way he's reading the text, and this is what it seems from the text, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a body, you can't call this person a min, but not that the Ravid is actually agreeing to that. That's what the understanding is, and it's clear what the Ravid is writing. It's interesting that the Choyves HaTalmidim, the Piasetzner Rebbe, the Piasetzner says that sometimes when a person is praying, a person is davening, and it's very difficult for this person to pray because they have to conjure some type of image to who they're praying to. And if a person has a more refined level of intelligence, it's possible to conceive, it can conceptualize some type of pure light or infinite space to where a person is praying to. But if a person has a constricted level of consciousness, it's possible that the only way the person could imagine themselves as if they're standing, as if they're standing in front of the Creator itself of life, is to imagine some type of king in some form, a very mighty king, or a very large king, a very powerful king. So the Piasetzner says that it's not terrible, at least in more primitive and initial stages, that when a person is praying, they can be soymech on the das Ravid, they can rely on the opinion of the Ravid, say at least you're not a heretic to do that. Of course, you shouldn't intentionally try to do that, but if that comes up, it's not too terrible. You go from that place of image to the place of the imageless. So maybe you could begin with some type of image. So let's get back to the Kuzari. So the Kuzari is presented with this question. The Chaver, the Melech asks him the question, the king asks him the question, and the question is, how is it possible to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, or what the Torah seems to be saying, that Hashem has traits, humanistic traits? So basically, the Kuzari says, the Chaver responds and says there are three types of reasons or definitions when we come to the understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's traits. One is Pa'alim, Oinilavim, Oishalilim. Pa'alim is what is being done, action-based. Nilavim is Yachasim, like attributed, and one is negative. And he explains it like this. There are three things the way we can understand this idea of explaining this concept. One is to say is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Nikar Rachim. Hashem is called a Rachim, V'chanim, Mahu Rachim, Machud Chanim. Hashem is called a Koinev, V'Nokim, V'Giber, V'Shakai. Hashem is called all these names. These names is not expressions of who Hashem is. It's expressions of the way Hashem, and a descriptive way of Hashem is interacting with creation. So imagine there's like this infinite formless light that's projected in a particular colored vessel, and now the light appears in that vessel to be a certain color. So let's say a pure light enters a blue vessel, and now the person outside the blue vessel is receiving that light, sees the light as blue. So really the light is actually the same, but the way it's experienced, the way it's experienced to the person will be as if it's colored. So this is one way of describing why we say Hashem hears and sees and talks, etc. These are not actually descriptions. This is the way that essence of the Creator is being expressed in creation through these channels that appear to be Racham, V'Chanan, and Oyev, V'Koyim. This is one understanding. The next understanding is it's Torah Yachasis, which means that it's the way that we describe, in other words, how we experience HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how we are going through the experience. So we can say that we're experiencing HaKadosh Baruch Hu this way, that it feels to us to be this way. It feels to us that Hashem is kind. It feels to us that Hashem is giving us wisdom, that Hashem is wise. So this is the experience, the way we are experiencing, and because we are experiencing, we are attributing it to what we are experiencing. The third understanding is that it's shalilim. It's what Hashem is defining and saying Hashem is life, to say that Hashem is not the opposite of life, or to say Hashem is wise, because Hashem is not the opposite of wise. But not that Hashem is wise or Hashem is life. It's what is known as this idea of negative theology. So we give a description to say what he's not, but really what he is, we're not describing at all. We're not defining God. We're not giving any description for God because it's impossible to describe Hashem. Hashem is infinite and transcendent. Okay. So what this means is that, as he says later in Maimer Dalad, that the truth is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Kadosh, in Yana Yosem Nelam Umerumam, L'chein Shom Yisho, Kadosh, 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 Adin Ketz. That means that Hashem himself is Kadosh Umerumam. Hashem himself is transcendent of everything, beyond, infinite, beyond any capacity for human grasp. And therefore, Yeshayahu, the prophet, the great prophet, says, Kadosh, 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 transcendent, transcendent are you. And that's the essence of Hashem, is beyond transcendence. It's transcendent. And why is there any type of description? So we have these three ideas. Why we're describing. We're describing either the way Hashem is revealed to us, or our experience of the revelation, or the negative theology, or the negative attribution. These are the three conceptions, the three paradigms that we can work with. But the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the essence of Hashem, is transcendence. Now that's very interesting, because that seems to contradict everything that we just said up until this point. Because up until this point, what did we say? In the entire Maimer Aleph. The entire Maimer Aleph was, in the first discourse, the first part of the book, is basically this king has a dream. He wants to understand what does Hashem want from him, what does God want from him. He enters into a dialogue with the philosopher, which is this Aristotelian philosopher. The philosopher gives him a description of who Hashem is. Hashem is some type of transcendent, infinite, unchangeable reality. And he says that logically it makes sense, but it's not experientially true. He doesn't feel it to be true on a subjective level because he feels it differently. Not only does he feel it differently, he actually has a dream that he experiences a Kadosh Baruch Hu. He experiences some type of interaction, some type of connection, and therefore Hashem has to be some level of immanence. And here what the Kuzari is doing in Maimer Beis, he's almost saying, yeah, Hashem is transcendent. So we're back to the God of the philosophers. It's not Elokei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. It's Elokei Aleph Philosophim, Elokei Aristo. Which means that it's not a God of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, not a God of passion, not a God of interrelationship, not a God that we enter into a covenant with, but a God of transcendence. It's the God of transcendence, and it's the God of the philosophers, not the God of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. So how does the Kuzari resolve this? So again, like we spoke in the first time, that one way to possibly say this is that the Kuzari is basically refining his understanding. This is a form of dialogue. So he develops an idea and then he further refines it. And as the text goes further and further, it's refining until he comes to the point where it's actually his opinion. But the truth is we don't want to go through that path. And we want to say that everything that the Kuzari writes, all the opinions of the Chaver, are actually true, valid expressions and simultaneously true. With regards to this issue, whether Hashem is purely transcendent and infinite, or Hashem is very immanent and present, the Kuzari actually addresses this almost directly in Maimer Gimel Yud Zayin. In Maimer Gimel Yud Zayin, in the third discourse, chapter 17, he's talking about the process and the progression of prayer, of davening, and then he says like this. When you say the first passage of davening, first passage of Shmoneh Esrei, which is called Birchas Avos, the blessing of our ancestors, you should conjure up this image in your heart and your mind of this idea of the value of the greatness of our ancestors, and the idea that Hashem entered into a covenant, which is the idea of a yichud pnimi, like an internal relationship that HaKadosh Baruch Hu entered into with Klal Yisrael. And Hashem brings redemption to their children and their descendants, which means that we have an intimate relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That Hashem is seen in our relationship with Hashem. That's the greatest proof that Hashem is present. The presence of Hashem is revealed in the intimate relationship that Hashem has with Klal Yisrael, in our history, in our development, in our relationship with this covenant throughout all of time. Hashem is revealed in history, and in our specific history. Ubracha Shniya, and the second blessing, which is Gevuras. What do we talk about in the second blessing? We talk about that Hashem is a moishel tmidius. Hashem is continuously taking care of the universe. Not as some philosophers would argue. Hashem is intimately involved with the history of the world. Hashem gives rain, and the source of rain. Matar Asurim takes us out of bondage, out of constriction. So we're talking about a creator that is intimately involved with creation. That the rain and the sunshine and the release from bondage and everything that's happening in this world and the whole progression on a macro level is also part of this progression where Hashem is intimately involved with creation. There's on Hagas HaYichud, the world is getting to a better place continuously. And Hashem is involved in the process of the world slowly evolving and pushing the world slowly to evolve into its better place. Yet, he says, we say a third blessing. Once we establish that Hashem is fully immanent and present within this creation, within our history, within the history of the world, within the creation of the world and the maintenance of the world, then we should say, at that point, we have to go a different direction and say, Ata Kaddish. Ata Kaddish means you are holy, you are transcendent. And you are transcendent and infinite and beyond everything. So we're saying both are true. We're saying on one hand, we say Avos, the blessing of our ancestors. And the second, we say the birchas of Ata Gibor. And we say that Hashem is intimately involved with history. And then at the same time, we conclude and say Ata Kaddish. These are the three most important passages of the opening of the entire Amidah, of the Shemona Esrei, that we ask for the Bakashas. But the three beginning blessings is basically establishing Hashem is intimately involved with our lives, intimately involved with the life of all of creation, and yet Hashem is transcendent. And this is the way the Kuzari actually wrote a little poem, Yehuda Levi, and he writes like this: Ka, Ana Imtze'eka, Hashem, where can we find you? Your place is transcendent and hidden, which means speaking to the transcendent aspects of it. Then it says, but the poem continues, Ka, Ana Imtze'eka, Hashem, where can we not find you? Your glory fills the entire universe. So we say both of these are true. Ana Imtze'eka, V'ana Imtze'eka. Where can we find you? Wo kann ich dich finden? Wo kann ich dich nicht finden? Like they say, like the song in Yiddish. Where can we find you? The song related to Maditcheva. Wo kann ich dich finden? Wo kann ich dich nicht finden? Which means, where can I find you? Because you're the ultimate numinous mystery, hidden, transcendent. And yeah, where can I not find you? You're everywhere. The fullness of creation is your glory. You're present everywhere. So this is the dichotomy almost, or the some type of paradox where they're both true and they're both simultaneously true. And this is what the Kuzari, this is the shitta of the Kuzari. This is basically what the Kuzari is saying. The Kuzari is saying is that this understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not an either or. It's not that Hashem is transcendent and not that Hashem is infinite. Or Hashem is transcendent and infinite and not that Hashem is vested into finitude, into history, and into immanence. Hashem is both. Now, let's go a little bit deeper to understand what that means. What that means. So, in the language of the Zohar and later of general Kabbalah and the language of Chassidus, there's understanding that there's something that's called Soviv Kalamim and Mamala Kalamim. Soviv Kalamim, like the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, is not literally something that surrounds the world. It means that it's so transcendent that it's not vested within creation. That's what we'll call the infinite power, the koyach habilti b'al. And there's also the koyach hagvul. There's also the koyach, the power, the potential to be vested into mamalakam, to fill creation. There's koyach habilti b'al, ma neshama malas haguf. Just like the Gemara says in Brachas, just like the neshama fills the body, which means that the energy of the body, the energy of the soul, is vested into the body, where the potential to seeing is vested in the eyes, and potential to walking and movement is vested within the feet. Same also, the koyach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is memalek halam, fills creation in every single detail of creation. So there is both aspects. Now, in this minor, one second. So both koyach hagvul and koyach hagvul, or bilti b'al gvul, the infinite and finite, or mamala kalam and sovereign kalam, are both an expression of something that's larger than them. That they're both part of the koyach ha'atzma, the koyach ha'atzmas. That the koyach ha'atzmas, the isness of the Creator, has both infinity and finitude. Let's take it another step. At the end of, in minor bays, at the end of Gimel, the Kuzari says something very interesting, because he says that we can't attribute any real attributes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We can't say Hashem is this. It's not what Hashem is. It's what Hashem is reflecting, or how we are experiencing it, or it's the negative. But it's not who Hashem is. However, he finishes something in the end of Bays. He says, "V'nikra oisa chacham lev, mipnei shu etzam hachacham ve'ein hachacham midoloi." He says, yet the essence of wisdom is not a midah, not an attribute, but the essence of Hashem, the etzem hachachma, the etzem hachachma, etzem haseichel, that the etzem hachachma, that the essence of the Creator is wisdom. What does that actually mean? What does that mean? So there is an attribute. Let's just look a second in the Rambam. Maybe this can help us understand this. Let's look at the beginning of the Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchos Yesod HaTorah basically starts off saying the beginning of all wisdom, the foundation of all wisdom, the foundation and pillar of all wisdom is leidash yeshem matzah, to understand that there's a primary being. And then he talks about the properties of Kaviyachol of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he says, "Hari mefurish b'Torah and halachikas. She'ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu guf v'gdiya." Hashem certainly doesn't have a body, doesn't have an image. And then he goes on to verse the halacha test. What does it mean under his feet? What does it mean the hands of Hashem? What is the eyes of Hashem? The ears of Hashem? He says this is the fidaita shabbanei. This is all in terms of the metaphor to allow man to understand. So the Torah speaks in the language of man, and they're kiluim, and it's a kol derech mashal. Everything is understood as a metaphor. This is what the Rambam says. So there's no attributions, there's no attributes to Hashem, of course. But then the Rambam writes, in halacha in Beis, in Yesod HaTorah Beis, chapter 2, halacha 10. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makir amita v'idei osik k'moshehi. Hashem knows everything. Hashem doesn't know things as if it's known from the outside. As if, because when we know something, the thing that we know is something outside of us, and then we come to know it. So there's a separation between us and what is being known. And what we know is added to our experience of who we are. There's something outside of us that we don't know, and then we come to know it. However, the Creator, hu v'daita v'chayev echad. Hashem and his das, his awareness, his knowing, and his life is echad mikol tzad v'pinu mikol derech yichud. Hashem is one. He's one, his knowing is one, and his life is one. And the language of the Rambam is hu ha'yedei, hu ha'yedua, hu ha'yedea, he's the knower, hu ha'yedua is what is being known, hu ha'yedei atzmi, he's the known thing, the knowledge itself. Akol echad. Normally, when we think about our own life, there's me, there's the thing that I have to know, and then it becomes known to me. With Hashem, all these three are actually one, which is kind of strange also, because the Rambam also gives some type of description, saying, on one hand, we're saying Hashem is ein lo tmuna, ein lo guf, Hashem has no attributes, and Hashem has no possibility of giving any type of a formation or form. Hashem is infinite. And as he explains more clearly in the first halacha, first chapter, loy chibur, loy piru, is not connected, not separated, loy mokim, loy mida, doesn't have space, doesn't have attributes, not loy aliyah, loy yerida, not high, not ascends, not descends, loy yamin, loy small, not right, not left, loy ponim, loy acher, no face, no back, loy yeshiva, loy yamida, no sitting, no standing, ve'enu matzim mizman, is not in time, ve'enu mishtana, doesn't change. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, and yet we're saying that hu ha'yedei hu ha'mad v'yedua. The chayav, we're saying that Hashem's life and knowing is one with him. What is life and knowing? Life and knowing seems to be like an attribute. A little more interesting, more puzzling, is that in this halacha yud aleph, perik aleph aleph, chapter 1 of 11, when he says that Hashem does not have lo aliyah v'lo yerida, not ascend, not descend, lo yamin, lo small, not right, not left, lo ponev v'lo acher, not the front side, not the back side. Then he says, ve'en lo mavis v'lo chayim, there's no death and there's no life. Ki chay ha'guf ha'chay, as the life of a living being. Lo sichlus v'lo chachma, and not wisdom. Ki chachma se'ish ha'chacham, as the wisdom of a wise person. Lo shenev v'lo katza, not sleep and not awakeness. Lo kas v'lo schayk, not anger and not laughter. Lo simcha v'lo atzilus, not happiness and not sadness. Lo shasika v'lo dibur, not silence, not speech. Ki dibur b'nei adam, like the speech of man. So if you look closely into what the Rambam is basically saying, when he says lo simcha, for example, no joy and no sadness, he doesn't say no joy like a man experiences joy, or no sadness like a man experiences sadness, or no anger like a man experiences anger. But he does say it by three things. When he talks about life, he says ve'ein lo maves v'lo chayim, not death and not life, ki chaya gufa chay, like the life of a living being, which is a description saying that it's alive, it's not alive, it's not alive, Hashem is not alive and not alive. Not alive like a way that a normal body lives. The same thing also with lo chachma, not wisdom, ki chacham seisha chacham, like a wise person knows wisdom. And then also when it comes to dibur, speech, it says ki dibur b'nei adam, like man speaks. So it seems that what the Rambam is saying, if we read it very clearly, and also from chapter 2, where he says, Hu v'daita v'chayav, he, his understanding and his life, that there is two types of attributes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you wish. You have to understand how that works. One is chayav and one is daita. One is his life, and it's loike chayav aguf, not like the life of the body. And one is also daita, or chachma, the loike chachas b'nei adam. Also his wisdom, but not like the wisdom of a human being. Why the Rambam writes dibur, speech, is simply because the whole Torah is full of speech. Hashem is full of speech. So the Rambam says, we're going to talk about speech, but it's not the regular speech. But what we want to hone into is what's the idea of chacham and wisdom and life. And it seems to me that's what also the Kuzari is saying over here at the end of in minor bays. Hashem is the essence of Chachma, and Chachma is not an attribute to him, suggesting that Hashem does have some type of attribute, which is the attribute of Chachma. So how could we say that? So what's the question? Let's fill out the question. The question is, on one hand, we're saying that Hashem is transcendent. On the other hand, we're saying that Hashem is present and immanent. Where can I find you? Where can I not find you? Hashem, you're both transcendent of everything, and also you're intimately involved in the history and in our own personal lives. So there's both the element of transcendence and immanence. So the question is with immanence, with the aspect that Hashem is immanent, does that mean that there's actually a quality that we can say that Hashem has a particular quality, or it's purely what the Rambam says and what the Kuzari says is that they're just toyarim, they're just expressions, but it's not who Hashem is, it's what Hashem is doing and the way we're experiencing that experience. That would be the logical way to say it. However, they both say that Hashem is a chacham, that Hashem is wise. Hashem has a life and is wise. So let's go 2 steps here. First one is in the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya, in chapter 2, brings down brings down from the B'kunei Zohar, that Hashem is wisdom, is understanding. Not wisdom that becomes through knowing, something that is external. And he brings down from the Rambam, and he quotes the Rambam that says, Hashem is the knower and what's being known. And then he says like this, that in the Haggah, in the note, he writes like this, that the Chachmei Kabbalah, the sages of the wisdom of the spiritual inner teachings of the Torah agree with this conception of the Rambam, as it's divided parts, as the parts of the Moshe Kadavera, the Ramak writes. Even according to the teachings of the Arizal, this is a correct interpretation. So what the Alter Rebbe writes in this Haggah is like this, that when we talk about that Hashem is transcendent, and is Meroimim Misnasa, is Kaddish Kaddish, like the Kuzari says, that this is why we say Ata Kaddish, that you are transcendent. This refers to the level of transcendence that's pre-Tzimtzum, which means, in colloquial terms, this means pre-creation. Pre the process of creation, Hashem, you are transcendent. Post-process of creation, where what happened, how was created through the teachings of the Arizal, not only through the teachings of Ramak, which is Ilu Ba'ala, which is cause and effect, but also according to the Arizal, which is through the Tzimtzum, which is a qualitative leap from infinity to finitude, where there's a contraction of the infinite light to reveal that creates the finite light. So what the Alter Rebbe is saying is that when the Rambam says that Hashem is a Chacham, what the Kuzari is saying, that Hashem is, the Creator has sort of an attribute, and that's wisdom. That's true post-Tzimtzum. After the contraction of the infinite light, and there's the creation of the 10 spheres of the 10 attributes, and these 10 attributes on the highest level, which is called Atzilus. On that level, it's the light and the vessels are completely unified as one. On that level, we can say that Hashem, the light, and the vessel, which is Chachma, are one and the same. They're so unified, the vessel is so nullified to the light, that we can actually call Hashem Chachma, even though Hashem is not Chachma, because of the Tzimtzum, Hashem was vested into the level of Chachma, of wise, so, and because in that level Hashem becomes one, the light and the vessels are one, so we can say that the light is also a Chacham, that the light is wise. Now, this would be true according to the Rambam and the Kuzari on the level of Chachma, and according to the Mukabbalah, this would be true of Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, and all the midas of these 10 attributes. That's one way of understanding it. So, again, on the level of transcendence of Hashem, pre-creation, Hashem is transcendence. In the pre-created story is Ata Kaddish. Post-creation narrative, which the experience that we're living as finite beings, where Hashem is interacting with creation and creating creation and manifesting himself within creation, then Hashem is vested within creation, and the higher spiritual realms of the creation itself, we can say that Hashem and what is being manifest, the attributes that are being manifest, are that's the vessel, is so nullified to that light that the vessel and the light are considered one, and therefore we can call Hashem Kaviyachal and say Hashem is a Chacham. That's one way of understanding. Well, let's go one step a little bit deeper. So, the Ramban's Rebbe, Ramban had two Rebbes, two teachers that taught him Soid. And one of them is a Messiah of Gerona, the Ziyal Messiah of Gerona. And he writes in a Sefer called Sefer Bir Spheres, and later is quoted by the Vedas HaKodesh and Meir Ben Gabbai. There's a quote that says like this: just like Hashem has a potential of infinity, the same thing also Hashem has the potential of finitude. Because if you don't say that Hashem is finite, then you're saying that Hashem is incomplete. Let's understand what the statement is saying. The statement is saying like this: in our minds, as finite beings, when we think about God, when we think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is Kaddish in the room, we think that because we're finite, and our life is finite, and the world in the dimensional reality of time and space, and we're trying to connect with something that's transcendent of that, we describe that experience of what we're experiencing, we'll say that Hashem is Ein Sof, infinite. Which means, to us, finite beings, the closest estimation that we have of HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be that Hashem is infinite. But the truth is that infinity, beyond form or formlessness, is itself a definition. Just like Hashem has a definition that is finite, Hashem also that's like finitude is a definition. The same thing with infinity is a definition. So when we say that Hashem is infinite, we're actually saying that that's a definition of being infinity. And if we say that Hashem is only infinite, that Hashem can only be manifest with infinity, that means that Hashem is not whole because he cannot manifest himself with finitude. And the truth is that both infinity and finitude are both creations. The perception of infinity, that's like the conception of finitude as a creation, The same goes to the conception of infinity as a creation. That Hashem is actually the isness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Atzmus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is beyond infinity, just like he's beyond finitude. And because Hashem is beyond infinity, Hashem is beyond finitude, we must say that Hashem is also beyond infinity, because if you say Hashem is infinity, that in itself is a definition. So what happened before the Tzimtzum? Why do we call HaKadosh Baruch Hu before the Tzimtzum Ein Sof, infinity? When in fact Hashem is not infinite, because infinite is just a description and it's a definition, is because that's the way in the conception of infinity, when the infinity is being revealed, finitude has no space. In the language of the Gemara, Chazal, the Gemara Chul, Shaga B'tir Ma'ahani. When there's a very strong light, a small candle does not make any distinction. So when infinity is being revealed, finitude cannot be seen as to be present. So what happened before the Tzimtzum is not that there wasn't infinity before, and that there wasn't necessarily there was not a possibility of finitude of Gvul as well. What actually only happened was that before the Tzimtzum, infinity was so expressive that finitude became nullified to infinity. What's the process of Tzimtzum? What does the Tzimtzum create? The Tzimtzum, the purpose of the Tzimtzum is for the infinity to contract itself, to allow for finitude to emerge. Not to create finitude, but to reveal the Koyach HaGvul in the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the essence of Atzvus Ein Sof. The Atzvus Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum was just revealed as infinite. And after the Tzimtzum, after the contraction of infinite light, now Atzvus Ein Sof is revealed also as finitude. So finitude, Kishem sheyesh lo koyach lebilti bal gvul, kach yesh koyach b'gvul. Same thing also Hashem has the potential of infinity. So that's like Hashem has the potential of infinity, Hashem also has the potential of finitude. And this is the depth of what the Kuzari and what the Rambam is writing. The depth of this teaching that they're saying is that Hashem is actually transcendent, and the transcendent also includes immanence. What is the immanence in the conception of the early Rishonim, the highest level of conception of the early Rishonim? What is that idea of where Hashem shows itself to be finitude, in a way that it's still a Kadosh Baruch Hu that is connected to Hashem? That would be Chachma. That would be wisdom. Why? Because in the early Rishonim, the way the Rishonim speak about that the highest level that the highest madrega that a person can reach is a level of Chachma. And from a level of Chachma, a level of wisdom, they can reach a place of Nevuah. But Chachma is the point that a person reaches right before Nevuah, right before prophecy. Before a person has an intimate relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they have to expand their level of wisdom to the maximum. And then when the Seichel HaNikna, their acquired intelligence, reaches a point where they transcend Chachma into the Seichel HaPoel, the active intelligence of the Creator, that's when they receive prophecy. So the Rishonim are writing that Chachma is the highest definition, and Chachma has, we can say that Hashem has properties of Chachma. This is all because in the Koyach HaAtzmos of Ein Sof, Kishem sheyesh lo koyach lebilti bal gvul, kach yesh lo koyach legvul. Same thing as Hashem has the potential of infinity, Hashem also has the potential of finitude. And where's that first expression of finitude revealed? That's on the level of Chachma. So even in terms of the spheres, it comes Chachma, Bina, Das. Chachma is the highest level. But certainly in the conception of the Rishonim, the early commentators from the 10th century forward, this was the way that a person reached, that their individual intelligence becomes part of the active intelligence of the Creator, and that's the way a person has attained prophecy. So this, we can say, is actually even a deeper understanding of what the Kuzari say. So not only is he saying that the midas, the attributes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the immanence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we have a personal relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is involved with our history, with our lives, with our narrative, and takes us out of Egypt, takes us as a mater asurim, and Hashem is immanent, and yet Hashem is transcendent because Hashem is atzmos, the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is beyond Kadosh, beyond transcendence, and beyond others, beyond being immanent. Hashem is beyond that, and because Hashem is beyond that, Hashem can both be expressed in the Gvul and ability about Gvul, in finitude and in infinite. Generally, we experience HaKadosh Baruch Hu infinity because we're post-Tzimtzum, and Tzimtzum is great from finitude. So for all of us to connect to something that's beyond finitude, we have to become infinite. But in the truth, we can also even describe and say, Kaviyachol, however we can understand this, because this is paradoxical. Essentially, it's paradoxical because we're saying that it's both finite and infinite and yet one. which is a paradoxical statement, but we have to say that because Hakadosh Baruch Hu has to be the Noisa Hafachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu has to be the source that maintains all paradox, because paradoxical thinking is only linear and only connected to the left part of the brain, but there's some type of wholesome understanding which includes both these opposite or apparent opposite paradigms. And this is what's being revealed. This is what the Kuzari is saying. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is absolutely transcendent and absolutely immanent, absolutely beyond everything and infinite, and absolutely connected and intimately involved with every single detail of our life. And they're both simultaneously true. We'll continue, Governor.